Greetings, world historians, and congratulations on surviving to week two. This is module two, Forces of Change, 1500 to 1750. And there were certainly a lot of forces of change in this period. So we're going to just have a quick introduction, recap, go over some of the things that we're going to be doing for this week in class. There is another short writing that's due in at the end of this week on Saturday, by the end of Saturday. Next week, midterm exams are coming up, so I'll say a little bit more about that later. But I just wanted to go through the targets and goals, learning objectives for this module today. So this is from part 4 of Strayer's textbook, where he's talking about the early modern world. So you might very well ask, early modern world, what is that? We have to remember that historians have a specific way of using the concept of modernity, modernization, in a way that's a little bit different than you or I might use in everyday speech. So when we talk about something being modern, very often what we mean is contemporary, iPads, listening to stuff on YouTube is considered modern. But in the context of early modernity, we're talking about the shift really that begins with Columbus, with the Renaissance, from a kind of regionalized world to a global world. So we're talking about globalization, we're talking about commerce, we're talking about interconnectedness. So I often use, which I think is a rather lame metaphor, but it's one that is quite useful as well, the image of the jigsaw of globalization. So all of the pieces are starting to come together. We're starting to see the globe in its entirety, 360 degrees. We're also going to evaluate today some of the possible reasons, and I emphasize possible reasons, for the rise of Europe between 1500 and 1750. Again, what I mean by that, why, for example, did Christopher Columbus cross the Atlantic in 1492? Why did the Aztecs wake up one morning and find Europeans, Spanish conquistadors on their front door? Why was it not the other way around? And why is it, that the Arabs, the Chinese, some other, advanced civilizations of this period, although there's a lot going on in other parts of the world than Europe, why is it ultimately Europeans who emerge with the territorial, imperial, commercial, technological advantages? None of this is inevitable. This is all shaped by historical forces. The other thing we're going to do is comparing and contrasting the different traits of maritime, by which I mean sea-going, ocean-going, and territorial empires. So there are some significant differences between these two categories. I'll just point to a couple of examples. Probably the best or the most obvious example of a maritime empire, and I'm not saying this because of my accent, would be the British Empire. So we're looking at an empire that was formed, that has territory spread out all over the globe, whether we're talking about Canada, at one point the United States, India, in Asia, Africa, Australia, all over the world. But the one connection that links maritime empires is that they're really empires of trading outposts, that they're empires that are formed by civilizations traversing the seas, traversing the oceans, and these become favored during this period of increasing globalization. Perhaps a more traditional form of empire might be the territorial empires, and these as well are also growing during this period. So we can talk about the China, which is itself still really an empire, Russia, and even more recently, I guess we could also talk about the Mughal Empire, which sort of takes us on to the spread of major religious traditions. Mughal Empire in India was a Muslim empire. So we're talking about Christianity here, but we're also talking about Islam, some of the other major world religious traditions, which had a tremendous impact on shaping this world forces of change between 1500 and 1750. So I do want to remind you there is a short written response due for midnight on Saturday, the end of this week. So do make sure you get that in before the deadline. You notice the triangular exclamation point sign there. Also, there are 3 chapters that we're reading for today's class. or for this week's class, I should say. So make sure that you complete your quizzes on all three of those chapters. There are, again, same format as before. You can get to retake the quiz. And hopefully make sure that you submit your best responses. But this is a way, obviously, since we don't meet face to face in an online class, of checking your attendance, making sure you're doing the reading, and that's really the equivalent of an attendance grade in a face to face class. So again, feel free to comment on the videos I'll be posting this week. There is going to be a short written assignment next week. There's no short written assignment, but there is a midterm exam. So I'll say a little bit more about that coming up. And I'll be in touch. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, smithmd6@miamio.edu. And have another good week. And I look forward to reading your responses once again. Thanks very much. Bye.